Good morning. I want to talk this morning about the generation Jesus mentioned in Matthew 24 and verse 35, and actually verse 34. He'd given an illustration in verse 32 where he said, "Take the fig tree as a parable. As soon as its twigs grow supple and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. So when you see all these things, know that he is near at the gates. I tell you solemnly, before this generation has passed away, all these things will have taken place." So we'll start with an absolute certainty. Jesus' words will come true. As he said, "Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away." Well, obviously heaven and earth are not going to pass away, so Jesus' words are absolutely certain. But in what way do we understand them? Well, Watchtower likes to believe in an overlapping generation. They might be right, but I want to give you a couple of other options and you can decide for yourself. So I'm going back to Matthew 23, and it's from verse 29 onwards, where he's talking to the scribes and Pharisees. And I'll read it from Philip's translation, because he says, "What miserable frauds you are, you scribes and Pharisees." And then he goes on to say that they are responsible for the death of all the prophets. And of course they were responsible for the death of Jesus Christ too. And Jesus said, "Yes, I tell you that all this will be laid at the doors of this generation." So that could be the generation Jesus was talking about. However, it seems unlikely, because when he mentioned the generation in Matthew 24, he was talking about himself being near at the gates. So that didn't happen in the first century. So let's have another look at his words. And this time we'll go back a little bit. We'll look at the context. Matthew 24, and Jesus was talking about the end of Jerusalem. So the disciples said to him, "Tell us, when is this going to happen? What will be the sign of your coming and the end of the world?" Well, Jesus gave quite a comprehensive answer there. And he goes on to say to be careful not to be misled by false messiahs. But then he said in verse 7, "For nation will, nation will fight against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in one place after another. All this is only the beginning of the birth pangs." Notice he said that's only the beginning. So let's go back. Let's just go on a little bit further to verse 29. Jesus said, "Immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will fail, to give her light, the stars will fall from the sky, the powers of the heaven will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the nations of the earth will wring their hands as they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds in power and great glory." And then Jesus said, "When you see all these things, know that he is near at the door." So it's the generation that sees all of these things, not just the beginning. For instance, if you went to see a Shakespeare play, and after Act 1, Scene 1, you got up and left, you would only have seen the beginning. So likewise with us, we see world wars, famines, Spanish flu, all these sort of things. They were only the beginning. In order to see all these things, we need to see the sign of the Son of Man coming in power and great glory. And I believe it's that generation that won't pass away. As it says in the book of Luke, when you see all these things occurring, then he said, lift up your heads because your deliverance is near. So what is certain from this? Well, I can't be absolutely certain that I've got the explanation for the generation correct, but it's something to think about. But what is certain is that these words will be fulfilled. We will see our deliverance when we see the sign of the Son of Man. And quite possibly it will be close, but we might have to wait a little bit longer. But we can endure knowing that our salvation is close. But thank you so much for watching this morning.